From Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the small but mighty bill in the appropriations process, and I want to thank Chairman Rogers as well and my ranking member, Nita Lowy, for the commitment that you've made to beginning to get us back to regular order, although I think we would all agree that we have a ways to go before we could officially declare that that has occurred. The budget deal that was struck during the shutdown last year gave us 2 years of discretionary caps so that the Appropriations Committee can get on with the business of funding important government programs from cancer research to the Everglades and Capitol Dome restoration, and that's what we on the Appropriations Committee are tasked to do. There has been no one that has been more focused on making sure that we could be good stewards of this institution and of the facilities for which we're responsible than my friend Tom Cole. And it has really been a pleasure. In fact, I have had the pleasure of being the ranking member or chair of this subcommittee with a wide range of Republican partners since there appears to be a little bit of a revolving door when it comes to the Legislative Branch Appropriations Subcommittee on the other side of the aisle. But you've been one of the best to work with and really have been an incredibly good steward of the institution. There are going to be many opinions about how the resources that we have here should be allocated amongst programs, but that's a legitimate debate rather than the alternative which we saw during the government shutdown in October. For my part, I'm pleased with the bill that Chairman Cole has put forward today, done within the funding constraints that the subcommittee had to operate under. The bill provides level funding, as the chairman mentioned, and unfortunately the constrained allocation has ensured that there is no increase for member and committee offices. Personal office budgets have been cut by 16% since 2010, while committees have been cut by 14% over the same period. When considered through a long lens, those cuts are even more damaging. The Congressional Research Service reported in August of 2010 that House committee staff levels declined 28% between 1977 and 2009. The recent cuts have only served to compound the decline in staff highlighted by CRS. There is no question that these cuts will continue to have a harmful effect on this institution, on our ability to retain the best and brightest and to serve our constituents most effectively. We've gone through some difficult economic times, but as we emerge, we need to consider how continuing these stark funding levels affect our ability to compete with the executive branch and the Senate for the best talent. When a senator can offer to double the salary of a legislative assistant working for a House member, for example, there is an imbalance that we should not ignore, because we ignore it to our peril. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for the focus as well placed on the Copyright Office in this bill. In our hearing with the Library of Congress last month, we heard about the need to bring the U.S. copyright system into the 21st century with business practices that provide for improved interaction with the copyright community. This bill starts that process by investing $1.5 million in much-needed IT improvements for the Copyright Office. The bill also carves out $750,000 to deal with the copyright backlog, which grew larger over the last few years as they lost staff due to tightening budgets. As the authorizing committees review our nation's copyright laws, these additional investments ensure that the Copyright Office can meet immediate needs as well as prepare for new ways to do business. In the Capitol Police hearing and during subcommittee markup, we heard from members on both sides of the aisle about the impact that door closures have had on our constituents and staff. That is why this bill includes strong language requiring the chief of the Capitol Police to remedy the long lines to enter the House buildings. And that report, due later this month, has to be specific, and it must identify additional door openings. We didn't just leave it to chance. Now that our budget agreement has given some relief from the sequester and the Capitol Police have been essentially made whole, door closures must be addressed so our constituents and staff are not waiting in lines stretched outdoors and down halls to get where they need to go. I might add that there was vocal unanimity on this sore subject amongst the subcommittee members. The bill continues funding for the House Historic Buildings Revitalization Trust Fund at $70 million, for which I thank the chairman, since the estimate to rehabilitate the Cannon House office building has come in at a staggering $753 million for this 100-year-old building. Investing a little at a time in the trust fund is the most responsible way to fund this and other major projects. And I want to thank Chairman Cole again for continuing to fund this fiscally responsible effort so we can bank the resources that we'll need for the Cannon Renewal Project. We know that these projects, especially with older buildings, when we went through the CVC project, we saw firsthand what that did. They always have cost overruns. This allows us to bank some of that money ahead of time. The bill also includes funding for the final phase of the Capitol Dome project at $21.2 million, and that funding will address the interior walls, columns, and coffered ceiling that have sustained significant water damage and paint delamination. The public will soon see the skyline of our nation's Capitol changed with scaffolding on the Capitol Dome that will begin to go up at the end of this month using funds from previous years. The total price tag to restore the dome will be around $106 million after this year's funding is provided. This bill supports several priorities within the Library of Congress that fund important initiatives. The committee directs the Library of Congress to continue their 30-year program to de-acidify books and provides an additional $1 million to keep that program on track. Within the library, there's also an additional $1 million for the Teaching with Primary Sources program to increase the development of online interactive programming and apps for classroom use on Congress and civic participation. Ranking Member Visklewski has championed this program for many years. Additionally, there is language supported by Mr. Quigley, which requests that the Library, Clerk of the House, and Public Printer work together to make bill status inquiries available to the public in a bulk data format by the beginning of next year. Also to note, the bill does cut the Open World Leadership Center by 43% to $3.4 million. While the funding that supports participants from Russia has been eliminated, the committee does encourage the program to do more exchanges in Ukraine and surrounding regions. I continue to strongly believe that this program is a square peg in a round hole in the legislative branch bill, which is a very small bill with a large percentage of it, too large, coming from Open World, and believe it should be funded by other government agencies like USAID or the private sector. If Open World is unable to find private sector contributions, then that does not speak well of the mission of the program. Finally, I want to thank my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for supporting my amendment to the bill last year, if you recall, that eliminated the funding for the Stennis Center. The Appropriations Committee had never received a budget justification from the center, and they were previously non-responsive to inquiries regarding their budget. Subsequently, amazing, they contacted the committee, submitted a budget request, and have done so again this year, and I understand Mr. Nunnally assisted us in getting those documents, and I appreciate that effort. In conclusion, I want to congratulate Chairman Cole on writing a balanced bill with a few targeted investments. Even though I wish we could do more to invest in our staff, I know that the chairman had many competing priorities, including our vast infrastructure needs. Again, Mr. Chairman, it was a pleasure to work with my colleague and with all of my colleagues on the stewardship of our institution and its infrastructure. I yield back.
Thank you. Though this